Imagine you are standing on a rocky beach somewhere in the Mediterranean Sea 3,000 years ago. The water is a deep, impossible blue. Salt is thick in the air. An old sailor sits near a fire and he begins to tell a story about a king who left for war and did not come home for 20 years. Not because he didn't want to, because the gods themselves would not let him. Hello, my friends. Welcome back. Today we are traveling into one of the oldest and most famous stories in the world, the Odyssey, the tale of a Greek hero named Odysseus and his impossibly long journey home after the Trojan War. I want to say clearly, right at the start, that this is a myth, a traditional story that ancient people told and believed, not a historical record of real events. But myths like this one shaped how millions of people understood courage, cleverness, and home for thousands of years. So let's dive in. The story begins after a huge, brutal 10-year war between Greece and the city of Troy. A war you may already know from another famous story, the Iliad. Troy has finally fallen. The Greek soldiers are exhausted but victorious and ready to sail home to their families. Odysseus, the clever king of a small island called Ithaca, gathers his men and his ships and sets off across the sea. It should have taken him a few weeks. It took him 10 years. Why? Because Odysseus makes one proud mistake early in the journey, and the gods do not forgive prideful mistakes easily in these old stories. After leaving Troy, Odysseus and his men land on an island and encounter a Cyclops, a giant with a single eye in the middle of his forehead, named Polyphemus. The Cyclops traps Odysseus and his crew inside his cave, blocking the entrance with a boulder so massive that no group of ordinary men could move it. Then, one by one, he begins eating the sailors. Odysseus, thinking quickly, gets the giant drunk on strong wine, then blinds his single eye with a sharpened wooden stake while he sleeps. It's a brutal scene, but it's also the moment that shows us who Odysseus really is. Not the strongest man in any room, but almost always the cleverest one. His men escape by hiding underneath the giant's sheep as they leave the cave, clinging to the animal's wool so the blind Cyclops cannot feel them passing by his searching hands. Here is Odysseus's fatal mistake, though. As his ship sails away to safety, he cannot resist shouting his real name back at the wounded giant, boasting about his victory. Polyphemus happens to be the son of Poseidon, god of the sea. The giant prays to his father for revenge, and Poseidon hears him. From this point on, the sea itself becomes Odysseus's enemy. In these old Greek stories, the gods are not distant, abstract forces. They get personally offended, and they hold grudges for years. What follows is one strange, dangerous encounter after another. Odysseus and his crew visit the witch goddess Circe, who turns half his men into pigs with a single touch of her wand, a transformation in the story that only reverses when Odysseus, protected by a magic herb given to him by the god Hermes, confronts her directly. Rather surprisingly, Circe becomes an ally afterward, and Odysseus and his men actually stay on her island for a full year, resting before continuing the journey. He also travels to the edge of the underworld itself, the land of the dead, to speak with the spirit of a dead prophet who warns him about the dangers still ahead. Imagine having to visit the world of the dead just to get travel directions. That's the scale of trouble Odysseus is in. Then come the Sirens, creatures whose singing voices are so beautiful that sailors who hear them steer their ships straight into the rocks and drown, unable to resist the sound. Odysseus wants to hear their song and survive it, something no man has ever done. So he orders his men to fill their own ears with beeswax, making them deaf to the sound, while he alone stays able to hear. He has himself tied tightly to the mast of the ship, the tall pole that holds the sails, and orders his crew not to untie him, no matter how much he begs. The plan works. He hears the most beautiful, dangerous sound in the ancient world and lives to describe it, straining against the ropes the entire time. Not long after, his ship must pass between two monsters guarding a narrow strait of water. Scylla, a six-headed creature that snatches sailors right off the deck, and Charybdis, a massive whirlpool that can swallow an entire ship whole. There is no way to avoid both. Odysseus is forced to choose the lesser evil, sailing close enough to Scylla that she seizes and kills 6 of his men, screaming out to him as she carries them away. He watches it happen. He cannot stop it. It's one of the quieter, sadder moments in the whole story, a reminder that even the cleverest hero cannot always protect the people who follow him. Eventually, exhausted and reduced to a single ship, Odysseus and his remaining men land on the island of the sun god Helios, where they are warned, very clearly, not to touch the sacred cattle grazing there. Starving after weeks at sea, his men break the one rule they were given and kill some of the cattle to eat when Odysseus is asleep. It costs them everything. Helios demands punishment from Zeus, king of the gods, and a storm destroys the ship completely, killing every single one of Odysseus's remaining men. Only Odysseus survives, clinging to broken wood in the open sea. He eventually washes up, alone now, on the island of the goddess Calypso, who essentially keeps him there for 7 long years, offering him comfort, immortality, and her own love, if only he will stay with her forever and forget his home. And here is something genuinely moving about the character of Odysseus. He says no. He misses his wife, Penelope, and his son, Telemachus, who was just a baby when he left for war. He misses his ordinary, mortal, difficult human life more than he wants an easy, eternal one. Eventually, the gods intervene, and Calypso is ordered to let him go. Meanwhile, back home in Ithaca, things have gotten very difficult indeed. Believing Odysseus is dead, over 100 arrogant suitors have moved into his palace, eating his food, drinking his wine, and pressuring his wife, Penelope, to choose one of them to marry. Penelope, just as clever as her husband in her own quiet way, delays them for years, using a trick. She says she will choose a new husband once she finishes weaving a burial shroud, a cloth used to wrap the dead, for her father-in-law. Every night, she secretly unweaves the work she did during the day, making sure it is never actually finished. It's a small, patient act of resistance that goes on for years. When Odysseus finally returns to Ithaca after 20 years away, he doesn't walk in through the front door and announce himself. He arrives disguised as a poor, elderly beggar on the advice of the goddess Athena, who has protected and guided him through much of the story. He wants to see, quietly, who in this household has stayed loyal and who has not. His own loyal dog, an old hound named Argos, recognizes him instantly despite the disguise, wags his tail one last time, and then dies, having waited 20 years just to see his master come home. It's a small detail, but it might be the most quietly devastating moment in the entire story. In the end, Odysseus reveals himself, and with his son Telemachus at his side, he defeats the arrogant suitors who tried to take his home and his wife. Penelope, careful and untrusting even after 20 years, tests him with one final clever trick of her own before she fully believes it is truly him. Home, after everything, is finally home again. So, remember, all of this is myth, not history. Nobody has ever proven Troy's war happened exactly this way, and certainly nobody has found a six-headed monster in any strait of water. But ancient Greek audiences didn't need it to be factually true. They needed it to be true about something else entirely. Patience, cleverness, loyalty, and the incredibly long, difficult road that sometimes stands between a person and the place they call home. I think that's actually why this story has survived for nearly 3,000 years, my friends. Almost everyone, at some point, feels like Odysseus, far from where they want to be, facing one obstacle after another, tempted sometimes to just stop trying and stay somewhere easier. Learning English can feel a little like this journey too, honestly. Some days the sea is calm. Other days it feels like there's a six-headed monster in your grammar book. But like Odysseus, you keep going, a little closer to home with every word you learn, even when the trip takes far longer than you expected it to. Thank you for sailing through this story with me today. If you enjoyed this journey into Greek mythology, tell me in the comments which part surprised you the most. Was it the Cyclops, the Sirens, or maybe old Argos the dog? And if you'd like more stories like this, simple English, ancient tales, just tap subscribe and I'll see you in the next one. Take care of yourselves. Bye for now.